We all know the song. You've heard it in the car, at parties, on late night playlists that smell like burnt CDs and bad decisions. Teenage Dirtbag. It sounds like angst, unrequited love, and that feeling of being invisible in high school. It feels harmless, funny even, about how a song being awkward, about not fitting in. But what if I told you that one of the most recognizable lines of late 90s alt-rock wasn't inspired by a locker room fantasy, but by a murder? A teenager, a gun, a suburban neighborhood that looked perfectly safe on the outside. Before Wheatus wrote a song that would define a generation's idea of teenage dirtbag, there was fear, violence, and a moment that shattered the illusion of suburban innocence. Today, we're pulling back that curtain on the true story behind Teenage Dirtbag. Not the sing-along, but the murder that helped inspire it. And what it says, the way that we romanticize teenage rebellion while ignoring the darkness that's underneath. You're listening to the Bunker Buddies Podcast.
I don't want to start a panic or watch the whole world burn. Just shine a little flashlight on secrets we never learn. Down in the bunker, buddies, where the shadows love to stay. Murder myths and monsters keep the daylight far away. So pull the door and lock it tight. Let the static fade to black. There's no turning back.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to the Bunker Buddies. I am your host, JD, and today we are joined with
Texas.
Now, Texas is from our friends over at the Beer, Beans, and Bullets YouTube channel. You can go check them out on YouTube. Please do. You'll find a lot of me over there as well. So, today, what are we talking about, Texas?
Well, me and JD have had this conversation off camera and off podcast for a while about his fascination with the term teenage dirtbag and kind of what it means to be a teenage dirtbag and kind of what it encompasses. There are several other people who have had the same question. A guy that you're probably not going to think anything of, Wheatus, the lead singer, Brennan B. Brown is his name. The lead singer of Wheatus, actually had this exact same thought process. What makes a teenage dirtbag? He actually made a song about it, and he dove in the idea of what makes a teenage dirtbag.
Yeah, so obviously everybody's heard the song. I'll probably clip a little bit of it somewhere along this episode, but Teenage Dirtbag, that song itself, I think that's probably one of the first things most people in the U.S. at least think when you say Teenage Dirtbag is you think of that song, Her name was Noelle. Ba-na-na-na-na-na. Yeah. So I think that's what myself and a lot of other people think when you say Teenage Dirtbag. What Brandon was kind of going into when writing the song, obviously, is something had to inspire it. What was that?
Well, it's a really little known fact by most people that he thought originally it was about having rugged individualism and kind of marching to the beat of your own drum, doing your own thing. Of course, this is, in his time frame in the 60s and 70s, it was kind of like along the lines of the hippies mindset, which is we don't follow the man, we're going to do our own thing. And one particular person that a lot of people also don't know a lot about, his name is Ricky Castle. The lead singer actually grew up in the same neighborhood as Ricky Castle. Ricky Castle is also known as the Acid King. So There's a whole long story here, and I'm gonna do my absolute best to not screw it up because there's a lot of conflicting information over the years, and this may not be the final version that people stick with, but this is the latest version of more or less the story.
All right.
And I will tell you up front, these are drug-fueled people whose testimony is not really believable because don't do drugs, kids, and especially don't do hallucinogenics because acid is bad for you. Okay.
Okay.
So like I was gonna hit this Mr. Mackey, little anti-drug thing, but this happened in Northport, Long Island. Technically, it's in New York, I guess. So, anyway, that's where this happened, and he actually grew up in the same neighborhood as this guy. Ricky Castle was born in 1967, and he grew up in Northport. Prior to him getting into the drug trade, and not just doing tons of drugs, but also being part of like a small group of people that sold drugs. Prior to him, in the hippie era, there was a group called the Knights of the Black Circle. This was again in the 70s. These guys were originally a bunch of hippies and outcasts from society. They would get beat up, and people would, of course, steal their shit, mainly their drugs. So they got tired of this happening to them for other gangs that would show up in the area, do this, and then leave. So as a way to protect themselves, they created this group called the Knights of the Black Circle. And basically what this was a bunch of guys who didn't have a lot to intimidate the others with. So they went with the old classical satanic angle. It's considered classical now. It's like you want to scare people, invoke the devil. So this was like they took inspiration from Ozzy Osbourne, AC/DC, all these old guys, musicians that were at their time just popping up, and they were super famous, right? So they take this angle and they start wearing leather jackets. They start doing all this stuff. And this continues on. They kind of make a name for themselves. The area is now starting to hear about these satanic worshipers that hang out in these woods. And these woods is Azia Woods is what it's called. They start naming it Aztecia Woods. And this place is a very particular place. It's peculiar in the sense that the police don't have jurisdiction there because it's right next to this park. It's give me a second.
All right, guys, hold on. We're going to stop the show really quick. I don't usually push stuff, but I've been rocking this really cool cowboy snapback. And I genuinely like how it fits, how it holds up, and how it doesn't feel cheap. It looks great, and it doesn't feel like one of those flimsy foam promo hats. I really encourage you guys to go check it out on their website, cowboysnapback.com. If you use my promo code Chuggers15, you'll get 15% off your order. Now, that's it. That's all I wanted to plug. It's a great hat. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen me wear it, go check out on my Instagram, all right? That's it. We're heading right back to the show.
And so in these, that's exactly right. And in these woods, this rebellious nature that's going on in the 70s, the hippie movement, more or less, these guys are doing their drugs, selling drugs. Marijuana is, of course, one of the biggest moving products. And shortly behind that, of course, is your LSD and, like you said, you're new to the scene type of drugs. Well, these guys were selling these, and Ricky Castle became exposed to this. Now, a little background on Ricky Castle. There's debate between everybody as to if this is a nature versus nurture thing, but regardless of where you fall on this, these are the facts. His dad was a Marine, and when he was born, his dad treated his birth as an inconvenience. As crazy as this sounds, he was so hyper fixated on sports. He became a coach, and he was actually watching some game on TV when his wife was going into labor with Ricky. He said, "No, we're gonna finish this game, and then I'll take you to the hospital." Pretty crazy. That's right crazy. There. That's what happened to this poor kid. He started life that way. So his dad, all he cared about was him being athletic, him being good at sports, all of that, more or less living vicariously through him, right? That's his ideal kid. And Ricky does this up until near the end of elementary school, where he collapses under the weight because his dad is overbearing and it's too much for him. So what he ends up doing is he ends up getting a hold of some marijuana from some hippies. And little do you know, this spirals into something much worse. So he smokes some marijuana, starts kind of getting comfortable with that, likes the effects of it, helps mellow him out from all the stress that his dad's put him under constantly. Now he ends up getting exposed to these things called dots. Dots are little tabs of acid. LSD, acid, ayahuasca, all of these things are hallucinogenics that people are using. So he gets these little dots, and in 7th grade, he begins using hallucinogenic drugs. Super young. His dad's pissed at him. It becomes this whole thing. And you got to remember, this is in the era where the kids they're left at home completely unsupervised. Like, think of free-range chickens, but for people. They're essentially just left to their own devices. And there are drugs flooding in, and the parents are at work and whatever else, and it's just, who cares?
I mean, this is also the generation that had to have commercials being like, do you know where your kid's at?
The street lights are on. Do you know it's 10 o'clock? Do you know where your children are? You know what I mean? So those fucking commercials they're laughable, but they're also pretty dark because it's a real thing. So how those people made it till now, it's a miracle, I guess. So Ricky is more or less an outcast in his family. His father can't stand him because of the decisions he's making. He also has younger daughters, and Ricky does try to tend to them and take care of them and be there for them because their father has little to no interest in what they're doing. So he's not completely a dirtbag yet.
All right. So what do you think is like this turning point of coming from just like a troubled background, kind of coming into this like teenage dirtbag?
Well, this is just an opinion, but I believe that Ricky being put under all of that stress, I don't believe he initially started out as a dirtbag. I think he started out as just a normal kid, but with an overbearing father and all these expectations. He was the first son, so everything's put on this guy. And his father's belief later on, there are other events that happen in his life when he's a teenager that his father says, we gotta introduce you to some good old fashioned Marine encouragement, and continues to beat the shit out of him, like corporal punishment, cranked up to 11. So that wasn't completely uncommon back then either, and that was what his father did, which only made Ricky turn further away from the world that he knew, being a normal person, whatever normal looked like, and just wanting to not exist anymore. As bad as that sounds, there are several times where he made attempts on his life. As we go through the story, as he's grown up, he's made several attempts on his own life to delete his subscription from life, and people that did care about him told him, "Hey, don't do this. You're going to end yourself." And he said, "That's kind of the point. I don't want to be here." Which is kind of sad for a young kid when you think about that.
Yeah.
No support.
It is very sad to see that he didn't have that kind of support and that kind of community growing up. But also, it's not very uncommon at the time. This is a very, I guess you would say, like, common thing in that generation. Especially, this is a generation that is going into the Vietnam War, which is very... It's the first time the U.S. is kind of really questioning the government the way that it is. And this is also where we get not only in the culture, but into the music, and even on the religious aspect of... You're coming down on this newer generation too hard, and you're pushing them away from everything else. And I also think this is the beginning of the divide, and you can kind of see on all fronts, on a family front, on a religious front, on a government front, as a nation front, that we are kind of being split.
Yeah, there's a lot of rebellion on all fronts. I agree with that. And it's hard to talk about that, like if I've been there, but all the generation before me, I've done plenty of... soul searching in my life, and when I asked the older generation, my parents and people older than them, what it was like in those days, and it is along those lines of, you just believed what the government said, and then the hippie movement happened. Then it was no bras, no this, no that, fuck the world, fuck the government, fuck everything, and it was just a very devil may care kind of attitude for a lot of people. And then there were some that did. There were people that pushed back against that idea, though. There were also others that were like, you know, don't wear your denim jeans. You gotta wear your suit and your pants and look presentable. And where's your hat and that kind of thing. And so it was a little bit of a washing machine for our culture at the time. You know, there was a lot of mixing up and issues. Going back to this part of his life here, when he starts doing these hallucinogenic drugs at the beginning of junior high, in 7th grade, he ends up doing quite a bit, and he ends up coming into contact with some of these older groups of people that have these hallucinogenic drugs. He ends up using a bunch of it, falls in love with it, the sensation, the feeling, whatever. Not only that, he starts introducing other people to it, starts selling it. There's a point in time where they break into another person's, I believe they break into his house, they steal his stash of drugs, and then he just starts handing it out to other people like candy. Just starts giving everybody all of this dope, which is unbelievable at this point. Because he even said several times he's more interested in doing the drug than selling it. So he's pretty much turned his back on society. He's left school to where he's never there, to where school has basically said, we're getting rid of you. You're not going to be here anymore. You're expelled, causing other problems while you're also here. The guy could not really read or write fluently. He was borderline 6th grade reading level, kind of the rest of his life. He spelled Satan, Satin, Satan.
Nice.
I'm not joking.
Are you sure that he just didn't value a high quality blanket? These are my morals. These are my blankets.
Well, see,
Hail Satan, satin.
Hail satin. It's really comfortable when you sleep on it. No, so I was originally, when I had done reading on this, it threw me for a loop until I realized when I was checking into this a little bit more that he was stuck at a 3rd or 4th grade writing level, comprehension level. So talking about Vietnam actually happens. There's a part of that kind of touches his life as well. He starts burglarizing people's homes, like we talked about when he's doing this with drugs. He starts burglarizing homes. He gets caught doing this, and he ends up going to jail. And his parents pick him up. Now he's a teenage dirtbag because he's worthless. He's doing all of the things that you're not supposed to do. Worshipping the devil. He starts talking about the devil. No one is entirely sure what moment it was that this became part of who his personality is or who he was at this point. But somewhere along the lines of this happening, he became infatuated with Satan. And I can't find a definitive source as to when or how. There are plenty of the books that even say that he himself isn't sure why this happens. It just does. Maybe it's the drugs. I don't know.
I was going to say, is it the drugs? I know the media at this time is also pushing the fact that these drugs are aligned with evil, and it's not just that it's going to kill you, but it invites evil into your life.
That's the overall opinion of it, yeah. I don't think anything that takes your mind away from you and puts you in a really vulnerable state is good for you. Whether it's considered evil or not by anybody, I don't think it's a good idea. Whether you fear the devil or not, I would like to be in control of my faculties. You know what I mean? Getting drunk is one thing. Not that that's any less dangerous than doing these crazy drugs, but some of the trips on these affect your brain moving forward forever.
For long term, yeah.
And getting drunk is just was a one night type of thing. You get hungover, oh well. Now, this is like a brain altering for this point moving forward, which I feel also may be a contributing factor to this guy's unhinged personality. He becomes more erratic as time goes on and more drugs he does. So he also talks about using ayahuasca too. That's another thing that he was pretty fond of using. And after being caught burglarizing and doing all this stuff, he gets committed to the South Oaks Hospital. He is 16 years old at this time. So he's got a long slew of burglaries, theft, drug dealing. He's been kicked out of his home, so he's homeless at 16. He threatens to commit suicide. Every time he gets caught and put in a hospital or in jail, he threatens to off himself. Every time he's interviewed by the police or a psychiatrist because of his erratic behavior, he puts up the front that there's nothing wrong with me, it's a misunderstanding, that type of thing. And every psychiatrist, I guess he is probably a prime example of a psychopath because he's able to convince them that he's fine. Either that or they just don't care enough to really read into it because nothing ever happens to him. And every time he threatens suicide, somehow it's just, all right, hands off. We're just going to back off this guy. Let him go. A little probation here, a little probation there, a couple days, a couple nights in jail here. It's the 70s. What do you want to do? That kind. Again, these are also the times where drunk driving meant you spent the night in the drunk tank, you paid $100 and you got your car out of impound. Yep. Three drunk driving events now, you're going to prison for life. 70s, it's a normal Saturday. Also very strange compared to where we're at now. And talking about this, after he gets out of the hospital at this Oaks place, he ends up bumping into another guy talking about Vietnam. His name is Pat T. Saint. He's a Vietnam veteran. And Anton LaVey is a really hot name during these times. He is the guy that crafted LaVeyan Satanism. So the Satanic Bible is something that him and his cohorts kind of worked together, and he came up with these atheistic doctrines of how to live a moral life without God, Christianity, or any of these influences by major religion, which I don't fully understand that, but when you read the Satanic Bible, if you ever do that, there are some things that kind of contradict what he has promoted as being ethical or being a moral person. There's a whole lot of very strange things in there that are contradictory to that, but we'll move past that. Anyway, Pat ends up talking to him and reading these passages with him, going over this stuff with him, as he's already professed himself to be a follower of Satan before he even meets Pat. So Pat kind of reinforces this in him, and they have this kind of a long on again, off again friendship kind of thing, where they don't bump into each other regularly, but they do see each other often enough to where he's getting these ideas and he's getting more and more of this doctrine put in his head. And the way it's explained to him is Satan is a very real thing by the Christian church. Satan is a very real thing in the Muslim mosque. Satan is a real thing in a lot of these major religions. But Anton LaVey, in his book, Satan is nothing more than an abstract idea, and it is not an actual personage. It's just a personification of rebellion, of individualism. So, does this also tie into being a teenage dirtbag? Pretty good question. What do you think about this so far? Just me telling you kind of the events of this guy's life to 16.
No, so far this seems like a pretty, I would say, I feel bad for saying, but it seems pretty normal. Obviously not everybody has these tendencies of self-harm or hatred, but the rebellion so far kind of seems normal. It doesn't seem like something that is worthy of writing a song about so far. Okay.
Well, I'm also in agreement. When you're young, you're trying to find out who you are in the world and how the world more or less works. But I also feel that it's very difficult to do that under the influence of any type of mind-altering drug. That just compounds the difficulty and frustration you get. So he's already a drug addict. He can't control himself on that. He's already found his passion, which is Satan, and burglary. He loves committing these petty thefts, crime, all of this stuff. That's his go-to. And he doesn't stay alone for very long. He ends up making a few friends. One of his closest friends, his name is Jimmy. And Jimmy ends up being a petty thief along with him. They become buddies. They spend a little time doing said things together. They get caught up several times, but Either one of them snitch on the other, so it kind of shows a little bit of loyalty. That whole situation, it becomes a thing. He ends up making really erratic claims as he gets older, and he has a lot of odd behaviors, such as he wants to hold rituals in these woods, the same woods that the Black Order was holding these rituals in, because these guys who were using the image of Satan to kind of protect themselves from these other gangs originally, when they had already graduated and left, that era was still around when Jimmy and Ricky were growing up. So they had heard of these guys. They weren't in on their gang or what they did. But as kids do, they hear a story of, oh, there's a bunch of Satanists in the woods and they sacrifice people and all of the stirring up of imaginations. So Ricky says, well, these guys are gone. Let's kind of do something along those lines. Let's go back to doing that. So that's what he does. Not as a... I don't believe he meant that as in we can do this as a way to kind of keep people away from us and to stay off of people's radars because we hate people, but more along the lines of he probably believed a lot of those stories, and since he's now a follower of Satan, wants to follow that idea. How far that actually went, I don't know. But he did scream out and claim to be Satan several times in the town while running through the street high as a kite. He also was accused of stealing people's animals and sacrificing them in the woods. The reason they called it Aztecia Woods instead of Asia Woods, which is what the normal name is, they call it Aztecia Woods because someone had bought this property and they started to develop it many years ago and then for some reason stopped. Either the money stopped coming in or whatever the case. So these houses collapsed, concrete walls are collapsing. It was just basically, it looked like Aztec ruins. That's what the kids kind of compared it to. And that's where they would go. They would make little fires and hang out, and this is where the Order spent their time. And the Order got their name because they would sit around a round table like this, and they reminded a lot of these guys about King Arthur's table, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where they came up with the name and the image of their newly forming gang, right? So Ricky didn't care about the gang part, he just cared about the satanic part. And he said, well, if they've been doing rituals here before, probably a good place to keep doing them. Feels like that's where he should go. Not only that, but because it was technically private property, the police had no authority there. So if they walked through those woods and caught people there doing drugs, legally they couldn't do anything. Because if they arrested you, there's a whole lot of gray area. Because what do you do when you arrest somebody on someone else's or on private property? Technically, they're not on public land. Technically, they're on private land. But the private land and public land are right next to each other. And there's no fence, there's no border, there's no signage. It's just, it looks like one piece of land. So the police will walk through there to let people know, hey, we're here. But they technically couldn't do anything. And all the kids that were around there knew that. So when they would go do dope openly, they would do it on that side. And the Aztecia Woods. In plain view of the police and other people in that cow park, literally just down the way.
All right. So that makes a lot of sense for me. Now I'm kind of more visualizing this area of just like, cool, the police kind of know what's going on over here, but because of that gray legal area, they're free to do what they want.
It was a legal nightmare for them to try to prosecute anybody.
Yeah.
And it had happened a few times before and set precedents that, hey, we're untouchable here. Word spreads fast in a relatively smaller town. So nobody really knows for a fact if this actually happened, but a lot of animals did come up missing, and they made the same accusations to him as they did with the Order. And about them sacrificing animals. Cats would come up missing, that whole thing. Cats and dogs, no one's seen them, and they were automatically attributed to these guys. So Ricky Casso is almost in free fall at this point because he gets arrested again. This time, not for breaking into a home or trying to steal someone's drugs, but trying to acquire a human skull. He gets caught up grave robbing with another guy named Gary, a friend of his, which is also becoming not a friend of his. Kind of an ongoing deal. They get caught up. One believes the snitch is on the other believes it's kind of like this. Now there's no longer this trust between them. Jimmy has been in and out of jail at this point. So Jimmy's been locked up and he's gone. So Ricky's hanging out with Gary. He makes another friend named Albert. That'll be a little bit down the road. But they get caught up doing this. Kind of creates a small amount of distrust and bad blood between them. Ricky takes it personally because he sees it as Gary getting in the way of him getting the skull for the satanic thing that he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Like, creepily enough, there was another guy who was part of that order who was said to have had a human skull also when they were in the woods, and they had it there with them when they would do their what they called a mass, a black mass. Nobody knows for a fact what that means or what actually happened in these masses. Nobody in the order would ever talk about it. They would just say, "Oh, we just hang out." Anyhow, so Ricky, taking inspiration from that, wanted to do the same thing. Didn't work out for him. So they spend a little time kind of in trouble for this, right? They end up getting out. They do a whole bunch more petty crimes, get caught up in that. A couple more burglaries, stealing drugs, and they end up stealing drugs from somebody. And it's believed, because it's just an argument between both of them in front of witnesses, that Gary took some of Ricky's drugs. And you don't take the acid, King's acid. He gets kind of pissed about that. So there's now real bad blood between them. They kind of have squabbles about it, and then eventually Ricky just tells everybody, "Nah, you know what? We're gonna go ahead and squash this. There's no beef here. We're done. I'll let it go." Gary's hesitant, but after a little while, starts to believe him because Ricky says, "Hey, Gary, and here's a show of good faith. Let me give you some more of these tabs, just to show you that we buried the hatchet."
Okay.
It's kind of where they leave off. More petty crimes happen. They're in and out of jail a few times. Jimmy should be getting out of his longest stint in jail. I think was 5 years. So he gets out of jail, and this is where he rejoins the group here. And these guys hang out. Ricky, Gary, Albert, which is another low petty thief, kind of hanging out with him, and Jimmy. So these guys all decide, hey, we're all going to get together, and Ricky said he wants us all to go out into the woods. They're hanging out with all these other people. They're all doing dope, and he's trying to convince more people to go with him to the woods. Everyone backs out except for his 3 friends. So they all go out into the woods. They all take a... This is where everything gets muddy. I just want to be clear about this. There is no true consensus as to what actually happens. Later, when they go to court for this, the lawyer says that... I can't quote him word for word, but the lawyer says, essentially, that only God Almighty himself knows as to what actually transpired that night and who's directly responsible for what. Because there has been so many interviews that they took information from. Either the police mishandled it, or because they were high as a kite, they were telling the police what they remembered, but it wasn't correct. And then the story changed several times for everybody. It is a quagmire in a quagmire. To speed this up, they go out into the woods, and then the unthinkable happens. They get high as a kite, and Ricky is not really done. Didn't really bury the hatchet. Isn't really over the fact that Gary had betrayed him in his eyes. So now they get into a fist fight, which is pretty common, right? You can get mad, fist fight. Maybe that'll bury the hatchet. Didn't happen, because as they were fist fighting, Gary started to actually get the upper hand. He started to win. After all these guys are already on these heavy drugs, hallucinogenic drugs. He then beats him up, and Ricky calls for his longtime friend Jimmy to come help him, which he does. Kicks him in his ribs, breaks some of his ribs, beats him up a little bit, pulls out a knife, stabs him. Ricky takes the knife from Jimmy and then repeatedly stabs him several times. Gary tries to get away from him. He does, and starts to run for his life. He screams out to Albert, who at this point hadn't put hands on anybody yet, was just watching this unfold, screaming for Albert to help him so he could get away with his life. because now you have two guys trying to kick his ass, and they have a knife. For anyone that's not aware, that's probably like 100% odds that you're not going to make it. Albert got up to help, but as he sprinted away, they caught up to him, and they repeatedly stabbed him more. They dragged him back to the small fire that they had made, and Ricky made Gary get on his knees and confess that he loves Satan, which Gary did. Which Gary did. He actually used the exact words that he was told to, and then Ricky killed him. Slit his throat. He stabbed him a bunch more times. I think all in all, he had suffered roughly 40 stab wounds to the face and body. You did pause, right?
I just muted my mic.
Well, this can be edited, right?
Okay. Sorry about that.
Got you some water. All right, so he does. He ends his life, stabs him over 40 times in the back, side, and in the body, and then repeatedly in the face. There were several moments where they thought that Gary was already unsubscribed from life, that he was done, and they were going to start digging a small, shallow grave to throw him in, and he sat back up. To which Ricky repeatedly stabbed him more times in the face, focusing on the eyes.
Damn.
Sure you need more water?
That's all good. It's like right in the back of my throat.
You know, a coughing fit going on. I know I'm boring you to death with this, but that's more or
No,
less...
like that's crazy, so...
He sits up after he's already been more or less thought to be deceased at this moment. Sits up, they panic, and he stabs him more times in the face, focusing on his eyes. And then he stops moving. Ricky and the other guys, this is where the hallucinations come in, because these are the events that we know to have happened. These are the factual events that we know have happened. Mm-hmm. And to hear them tell it, there was also there was wildlife that got involved with this murder, because Ricky believed that Satan wanted him to sacrifice somebody to him, and told him this, because this does seem like it comes out of nowhere. It seems like it's just hey, this guy stole my drugs, fuck him. I'm gonna beat him up a little bit, maybe stab him up a little. He went full on with it, because this is what Satan told him to do, and he knew he was doing the right thing, because as he was stabbing him, there was a crow that would caw.
Something like that.
Sounds like something Satan would do, right? I guess. I struggle to understand it, because I'm not on dope, but that was confirmation for him. Was that after he killed him, that crow started to caw, and that was to let him know, like, it's a pat on your back, good job. The trees also helped him by holding Gary down. While Ricky
Lord of the Rings type of shit. Trees start walking in.
Fucking Groot was holding him down while he stabbed this guy up. And I'm not making light of the murder, guys. It's a terrible thing to do. But
I'm just more making fun of the recalling.
This is their testimony. This is what they had told the police in their reports. And there were, at one point, a swarm...
Your Honor, I was Snow White, and the animals and the trees started... And then obeyed my commands?
And a swarm of bees showed up. When he was getting stabbed, a swarm of bees started attacking him. It happened. That's what they said. If they're to be believed, Mother Nature herself said, fuck this one guy for some reason.
So, do you think this was more of the drugs or the possible CTE this guy inflicted
I'm
if Gary was rocking him before Jimmy hopped in?
Maybe Gary knocked what screws he had loose completely out of the socket. I don't know. But I'm assuming it's a combination of the drugs. Because this guy has done this. He upped his usage almost exponentially before this happened. Like, the guy was doing so much that he was homeless. He would sleep outside. They found him in one of the neighborhoods that he lived in their backyard, where a tree had been uprooted and fallen over, curled up in that hole like a grub worm, asleep in their backyard before this murder took place. And the guy that found him was like, "Hey, man, Ricky, what's wrong with you? Come inside, man." He gave him some food, let him shower, gave him some clothes, and called his dad and was like, "Hey, Dick, your son's here. He's been sleeping in the hole in the ground I got in the backyard for like 2 days. You want to come get him?" To where Rick replied, quote, "Mind your own fucking business," and he hung up on him. Just, I don't know how much more to explain this amount of nonsense, but these are the guys that are reportedly not on drugs, by the way, his parents, his dad.
So obviously this becomes a huge deal, right? Do you know how everyone found out about the murders?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because there was only 4 people that went up there, but only 3 of them came back. So after they stabbed Gary up, Ricky stabbed him up, they kind of made a shallow grave, covered him with some dirt and some leaves, and then just left him there. And was just like, cool. Everybody, game plan. Shut the fuck up about this. No one say anything to anyone. All right, Ricky, we'll shut up about it. Because clearly this is murder, and we know we're all going to prison for this. So, yeah, we're going to shut the fuck up about it. They go down the hill, and Ricky's like, change of plans. I'm going to tell everyone I know. And then runs out into the fucking neighborhood and starts telling people. Shit you not. Jimmy follows his lead and is like, oh, okay, we're cool doing this now? Great. Yeah, guys, I was there, man. We stabbed the shit out of him. It was great. They bragged about it to other people. And granted, these people already knew that Ricky and Jimmy were both drug addicts. Mm-hmm. They kind of romanticized everything they did and exaggerated everything they did. They were already known as just those guys.
Yeah.
So no one really took them seriously. But they confessed to everyone that they had murdered Gary. And after some time passes, Gary never shows back up around their neighborhood. Doesn't show back up to school. No one's seen him. Somebody calls Gary's mom and says, hey, your son's been murdered. You'll never see him again. And they hang up on her. No one knows who it is. She thought it was a prank. Turned out to be true. Maybe it was one of those guys. Maybe it was someone that saw it.
Damn.
Because not only this, were they laughing and making fun of him about it, Albert was like, yo, man, this is eating my conscience up. This is too much. He's guilty of kicking Gary at some point. Either while he was already down or kicked him when they kicked him into the grave, one or the other. But somewhere along the lines, they had determined that this had happened. So this ate his conscience up like a normal person. Right?
Yeah.
And so he's at the edge of trying to tell somebody, but is deathly afraid because Ricky said, if anyone else finds out about this, basically I'll end your life. Mm-hmm. Coming from the guy that's already told everyone. Which also doesn't make any sense. Really erratic behavior.
Yeah.
Doesn't go well for them because they end up hearing about this murder because Ricky and Jimmy take people from their neighborhood up there and bragging about how they murdered this guy. They call him on it and say, nah, I don't believe you, man. You're just running around here talking a bunch of shit. Like, we don't believe you. Well, come with us. We'll show you the body. Okay, we'll go with you to look at this body. It's his fucking body in this shallow grave. His head is detached at this point. So when they put him in a new grave, they like kick his head in there and then they just rebury him after they've shown these other people that he's still here. Ricky thinks it's a cool idea to hang out and watch him decompose too. I shit you know.
Okay.
So is this a teenage dirtbag?
I mean, this is obviously what the news and the media is calling this, is teenage dirtbag, and this is from, you know, the band tease, the Satanic Panic that is beginning.
And actually, when he was photographed after the murder, when they had arrested all of them and were taking him to trial, he was wearing his AC/DC shirt. That wasn't even his shirt. It was a shirt that was loaned to him by a friend of his. They just gave him something to wear because after, let me back up a little bit. Prior to to them deciding, hey, we're just going to cover this up and not talk about it, and then fucking it up immediately. He's like, hey, well, we're going to have to find a way to get out of this, because at some point, the cat's going to get out of the bag. And it's not going to be my fault, because I'm Ricky Castle, and I don't make mistakes. I have the power of Satan on my side. After he's told half the fucking town. But anyway, he decides this might get out. People might hear about it. Somehow. So we need to get out of here. We can either join the military. I don't think that's going to happen. Or we can go buy a car that's not tied to any of us, and we'll drive to California and we'll just live out there. There's a lot of drugs in California. We'll just go hang out there. Cool. That's what we'll do. So they go, steal a bunch of shit, pawn it, sell it, make some money, go buy a car on the cheap. After they tell the guy that sets them up with this person that's selling their car why they need it. Oh, we murdered a guy in the woods and we need a car to get out of here. They also told him that too. If you can...
All right, so if anybody's taking notes, note number 1, do not tell people of the murder. Got it.
It's not funny. The murder is not funny. But
the murder is not funny, but it's the reaction and I guess the plan of after the murder.
This is what happens.
So if you're trying to figure out how to get away with murder and not get caught,
step 1, don't say anything.
Don't follow Ricky Castle.
Terrible idea. But again, Satan told him that this is a good thing. Just laying that out there. So after he does this, he's going to get in this car and leave. But before doing that, they need a little bit more money. So they're going to go back to town, park the car. They're going to sleep. They're going to rob a bunch of people, take a bunch of shit, sell it to get gas money to go across the country from New York all the way to California. Nice. And they'll just continue to rob and steal shit on the way there to get there. Because they know how to steal car stereos and do all this shit. They'll just do that. Well, step 1, park in our park in a place that we're not known for parking in a car that no one recognizes, in a neighborhood that everyone knows each other in, and fall asleep in the car. That's exactly what they do. So the police are called. Hey, there's a car. It's got some kids in it. I don't know this car. I don't know what's going on. They're not from our neighborhood. The cops put 2 and 2 together because Ricky and Jimmy have been missing. They caught Albert and brought him into the station, tried to get him to confess. He didn't. They even beat the shit out of him. It's confirmed. Like, he came home bloodied up where they tried to beat it out of him, literally. Again, kids, different time. You want to talk about police brutality now? Whew, ain't shit since back then, right? So Albert's walking with a limp from this, and they end up saying, we don't even need Albert. We found the kids here. So they get a whole squad of these guys, police officers, ready to duke it out, maybe shoot these guys. They don't have to. They're asleep. They pull them out of the car, cuff them up, take them to jail. They go get Albert. Albert, we know where you are. Come on out. We caught the other ones. Now it's time to get to the bottom of this murder here. Because the police had already found this body at this point. They thought they had decapitated him. That's not originally what happened, but the head was separate from the body. So again, they thought it was part of some sort of, again, satanic ritual. The cops in charge at this place had already had this preconceived notion that it was satanic.
Yeah, they built their own narrative.
Prior to this even being discussed by the people who did it.
But this is just them using past experience, especially with their rap sheets, to kind of build the narrative before having, which is also very common with a lot of older police investigations when DNA is not being really used. So they are basically being like, here's blood, here's a knife, obviously he got stabbed, even though, let's say there wasn't even a knife involved. So this was more of just the police just being like, this is kind of what I think happened, and let it out to the media, and the media was like, this was a satanic ritual.
Well, that happened after the arrest, where there's supposed to be a liaison between the police and the press. The media is supposed to have somebody between them and the police. This police sergeant wrote this entire article himself and gave it to the media. We're like, hey, here you go.
Nice.
Also not part of protocol.
Nice.
So if you're following along...
I just imagine like a police sergeant with a cigarette, like a low-lit room, typewriter, like... ding, 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 ding,
I am the devil. End. Pulls it out. Da-da-da, sum it all up and give it to the press. like 100%. It was just that comical, but that was more along the lines of what had happened. And the fucking guy did it. Which did not help anything because when these guys were taken to trial, well, some of them were taken to trial. I'll get to that part here in a minute. You can't do that. So if you're also taking notes and you're going to make your own police department, don't let them do this. Because this mismanagement of evidence and statements and everything else will fuck you in court. So,
well, what year are we on? This is roughly like the late 70s?
Right around.
All right, cool.
So
because DNA doesn't really come into play until like the 90s. Like the late 80s, early 90s.
This is the thing. They didn't even need that.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, it's really funny to see, like, today we're using forensics and we're using camera. They don't have any of that. This is old school, hardcore police. I'm going to beat the shit out of you until I get the answer I want. Which, honestly, pretty cool to be a cop back then.
I don't think so, because they beat the shit out of this guy and he did not confess.
I don't know. Maybe they needed to do a couple. I'm kidding. But...
Look, man. Look.
But I just feel like it's pretty cool to be like, you can get any answer you want as long as you have a bully club and a dark lit room. Soundproof room.
We put you in a burgundy room so we can't tell the difference between the dried blood and the paint.
Yeah.
It is pretty terrible, but...
So weird that you go to talk to police and you walk out and you have to have a wheelchair to get out of there.
Assuming that they don't just toss you out onto the curb.
Yeah.
Unconscious. So yeah, there's... We'll back off from that just a second. I've got my own stories about police brutality, but we're gonna say this: that's a bad idea. Don't do that. They did it, and so the next part of this is trial. Well, after they've arrested everybody, they're all in the clink. They wanted to specifically make sure that Albert would walk past Jimmy in the hallway. Jimmy had saw Albert already; his face just fucked up, like limping. Being helped into another room and was like, hey, just so you know, we got all of y'all.
Yeah, psychological.
We got all of y'all. Jimmy, without skipping a beat in the hallway, turns around and struggles so Albert can hear him, yells out, tell them everything. Before he's taken to his interrogation room. Albert didn't tell anything at the beginning because he was afraid that if he did, Jimmy and Ricky would work together to frame him for the murder and they would both get off scot-free. That was his response when they asked him how come he didn't say anything the first time. Well, again, no evidence, no DNA, no anything. He just didn't want to have them turn around and put it on him. Now they're both in custody. Ricky said, if you put me in that jail cell, I'll end my life. He's threatened this every time before. Never carried it out. So, they beat him up, reportedly. One of the reports. They beat him up a little bit, rough him up, and they throw him in there. They're like, hey, yeah, well, fuck you, kid. You're going to go to jail, and you're going to go to court. And everyone's saying, you did it, you stabbed him, you murdered him, you're going to get put away for life. And he said, well, if you put me in there, I'm going to kill myself, and I'll become the devil's right-hand man because of how great I am. That's what he said. And he said, oh, and Gary's in hell, by the way, too, because we had him scream, I love Satan before we killed him. So... he's in hell too. I don't know how you can make that discernment that you know where people go, but that's what he said. Maybe it was that crow calling. I don't know. So he's doing this, and the people that are other inmates in these jail cells hear him talking about all this shit. So they start telling him to just go ahead and kill himself. They start chanting, like banging on the bars, hang up, hang up. So he does. He ties his fucking bed sheets up, wraps it around his neck, and then fucking checks out of life. Like a coward. So that leaves Jimmy and Albert left for trial. At 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:15, 2:17, somewhere around there. The exact time is a little debated, but somewhere around there is when he committed suicide. So now that leaves Albert and Jimmy on trial. And to sum this huge trial up, it was a spectacle. The media was like in a frenzy. All this other shit was leaked by the cops to the media. It was a huge thing. It becomes a circus. They mismanage everything. Jimmy gets off scot-free. Not guilty. Albert gets off with like some minimal punishment. Ricky Castle is dead, no punishment, and everybody was just like, "Well,
justice.
Our job here is done," and that's the end of it. That's the end of the story.
That is crazy. So, with all the media and how the media takes this trial, and they take the story and they start blasting it, because again, this is a small town. So the media is having a field day with all of this. So they're like, all right, cool. They're putting out, again, this eventually gets back to the lead singer of Wheatus, Brandon, and he gets that title, Teenage Dirtbag. This could have been used before. This does get used a lot afterwards. But Teenage Dirtbag then becomes cemented in the media, because this isn't just the local news. This gets picked up. This is national news now. And it becomes a big event because it's it becomes this Satanic Panic, which we will have more stories and we'll go over this in another episode pretty soon. But this Teenage Dirtbag is now tied to Satanic Panic and kind of tied to this rebellion wave that is going on throughout the nation.
Yeah. And the sad part is, these are all teenagers that were just wayward. The majority of the books you read, other people that have investigated this, gone through all the media papers, when they try to talk to the media, there's a lot of things that have been twisted around, stories that have been manipulated by the media themselves for more sensationalism. Shortly after this, Jimmy did go to prison, but for something else unrelated. He was a criminal at heart at this point. And he went to prison. Albert ended up joining the military. He actually writes a memoir down the road, like previous to where we are now. But he ends up writing a memoir, kind of remembering that moment in time, along with several other things that he did in his life. But that's where some of the people get these get this part of the story, is from Albert's memoirs too. That's the latest book. There's a book out there. I don't know who wrote it, but it's called The Acid King. It's you can find it. It's everywhere. That's the latest of where we are on this story.
Okay, that's crazy. Okay, so we've kind of painted this image of the small town. This crime happens. The main person, Ricky Castle, who commits this crime, offs himself. His two accomplices basically get off scot-free. And then continue to also then split and live two different lives.
Jimmy remains a criminal because he's been a criminal the majority of his life. And then Albert doesn't. He straightens himself out, realizes that was like, way too far. Mm-hmm. The amount of drugs and that lifestyle could take you that far. And says, I'll never do that again. And then joins the military. There's other stuff in his life too, but I mean, that essentially is where he ends, joining the military. So there was no real justice that was served. It was a senseless murder. It started out as just, this guy owed me money. I don't really trust him. He owes me drugs. I don't really trust him. He may have snitched on me. I don't really trust him. It's a whole lot of these I don't trust him. Why are you still hanging around this guy then? Oh, it's because, eventually I'm going to murder him. That was probably part of the plan.
Yeah.
People argue it was spontaneous. People argue it was planned. No real evidence either way. They're both as... You could take either side and defend, have a pretty good defense for either side. So I don't know. Again, this is before I was even born. Before my time. So I don't know what to make of it other than the fact that it was a senseless thing that happened. Drugs are bad. Hallucinogenics are probably the worst. And long-term abuse of these things will probably take what you have left of your life. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's my takeaway is don't do drugs, and Satan's probably not the best person to follow.
Yeah, and obviously, not only just because obviously we weren't there, and we weren't raised in this era, but based on stories that we've heard, and even some of the movies that we recently did seen on A Few Films More. Go check that out on our YouTube page.
The Triple B YouTube channel.
But A Few Films More, we watched a movie. It was called The Greatest Beer Run. And we kind of get a look at the media in that era of the Vietnam War in the 70s and the late 70s. And they are trying to do what they think is right. They're reporting what they're seeing. However, they aren't seeing everything. They're only seeing what they are being told they are allowed to see. They're only getting so far in the clearance, which is also what I think kind of happens with this jaw of Satanic Panic and with Teenage Dirtbags, because they just start being like, well, oh, this person who did a murder also listened to AC/DC and Metallica and Ozzy Osbourne, and you know, and they make these wild connections, which are just never true. Like, not necessarily they aren't true, but they are just a stretch. So they're like, if you listen to Ozzy Osbourne and you listen to Metallica, obviously you love Satan, and that's the draw. And if you love Satan, you're a murderer. And these are the connections that the media starts making, and they start kind of scaring the middle America, the middle class, of just being like, oh, this could happen to anybody in your town. Are you listening?
And Satanic Panic 2.0 happens in the late 80s, early 90s as well, with Rob Zombie, or White Zombie, Rob Zombie, Satanic. You have Eminem when he first debuted.
Marilyn Manson.
The shit that he's doing, all this is pushing the envelope too far. On the rock scene, which is where you're focusing here, this is Satanic. Marilyn Manson he's the devil incarnate. He's trying to drag your children away from the church and into this black mass. And if it's not them, then it's AC/DC, who's still been around, the original Satanic Panic gang. Metallica's now coming on the scene. And then these guys, we don't really have any songs specifically pointing out that they're satanic, but they're lumped in with everyone else, so why not? And there are a lot of these particular ones that they point out. Marilyn Manson was one of the top ones for sure.
Yeah.
And every time he was brought in for an interview, he kind of walked circles around the interviewee. Like, you know, the guy that was trying to set him up to look terrible ended up looking like a clown most of the time.
Yeah.
Because Marilyn Manson's not just some joke. You know, like the guy or not, he's pretty intelligent.
Well, also a lot of these bands and a lot of these artists that they're like, oh, a lot of these guys are very devout Christians. They were raised in Christian households. I mean, they go on. They either currently or they went on to go and find Christ, and I think that's also something.
It's kind of weird how that happens.
Yeah.
But when you look at Ozzy's lyrics, there's a lot of songs that they quote as being a satanic song, but none of the lyrics really support a lot of that. There are several AC/DC songs, other than like Hell's Bells and Highway to Hell. There aren't a lot that outright just call on Satan for anything. It's just really weird. The way that they say, well, clearly, dirty deeds done dirt cheap, talking about murder, right? Killing somebody, that's evil, so it's Satan's work, so it's Satan. I guess you could leap to that logic, or it could just be that people are just making songs about doing dumb shit.
Yeah.
You can listen to any rap song now, and is that satanic? I mean, you can make that argument with anything,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I mean, kind of going back to the whole Satanic Panic movement, and kind of going back to a little bit of our movie reviews and what we do, if you would want to see, I think, a good representation of, it's very dramatized, but a good representation of the Satanic Panic, and especially with like devil music, is if you guys have ever watched Tenacious D's Pick a Destiny, one of the very beginning, with a young Jack Black in Missouri and his father played by Meatloaf, you kind of get this middle class, middle of America kind of kid who is told, oh, don't listen to this rock music, it's the devil's work, which is hilarious that his father is played by Meatloaf, for the fact that Meatloaf was also kind of jumbled into this too, because he has some great historic hits, which, I mean, Bat Out of Hell. So, I mean, like...
it's got hell in it.
Yeah.
He worships the devil.
So, all that... But I think that little scene, it's a very short scene, but it's a very, I think, a good representation of, like, this wasn't out of the norm. This was something you would see pretty regularly, is just the panic of just like, nope, we're not going to do that. You're going to only listen to gospel. And
you know, Sinners does that too in the whole movie
They do.
as well.
Another movie we reviewed.
Drop this devil music, this jazz and this blues and this and all this turns into down the road. Forget all of that. Just put that down and sing gospel. Hey man, everything is, in my opinion, everything is a tool, and you can use a tool for anything. I can use this knife to cut up some delicious vegetables for my friends and family and have a dinner, or I can use this knife to stab someone 37 times in the woods. Kind of depends on what you your intent is more important than what you're using, right? So I think, just my opinion, I think that some of this stuff is just that. It's sensational, it's a reach. But the Satanic Panic is part of this, but it isn't answering the question of what is a teenage dirtbag. Is a teenage dirtbag somebody that values their life over everyone else's? Is a teenage dirtbag someone that doesn't value their own life? Because Ricky Castle said several times he just didn't want to be here anymore. Mm-hmm. And that was the end goal, was just, they said, these drugs are killing you. And he's like, that's the point. What is the goal here?
Yeah. So I think that's the questions that we're going to be talking about leaving this episode is, what is a teenage dirtbag? What is Satanic Panic? Why is Satanic Panic? And I think those are some of the things that we need to deep dive in the next episode. So thank you all for listening. This is where we're going to leave this one. I hope you guys do like and subscribe. Follow for more. You can find us anywhere. You can find any podcast. And hopefully by this time this episode comes out, if you guys go to the bunkerbuddyspodcast.com, we have a merch store. You'll be able to go find a whole bunch of cool merch and all of our fun updates. Please go and check it out. Go buy yourself some merch, buy yourself a hat, buy yourself a shirt, and support the channel. Besides that, please go over to the Beer, Beans, and Bullets YouTube channel. You can find them on YouTube, Instagram, but go follow us on YouTube because that would mean a lot for us.
No. And we appreciate any and everybody that subscribed before and still subscribe now. Thank you for that. It means everything. And
obviously, go check out the Patreon.
Yes.
If you go follow the Patreon, we're going to have a lot of cool content. You're going to actually see some of this behind-the-scenes stuff from Bunker Buddies on the Triple B Patreon. So please go and check out the Patreon because that will also give you some really cool content. Do you have anything else that you'd like to plug before we go?
Don't do drugs, kids.
That's important. Don't do drugs.
I think it's pretty important. Don't do drugs.
And don't kill people. I think that is also...
and then, if you do, don't go and tell the entire town that you did it. And then wonder how you got caught.
Yeah.
Like no part of this makes any sense. Just the whole... I think that... All right, I'll shut the fuck up. I think that's everything.
All right. We'll see you guys on the next episode of this Teenage Dirtbag series. This has been Texas. I'm your host, JD. Remember, trust no signal. Stay locked, stay loaded, and we'll see you guys next time. We're out of here.